let's see. What's been new? What is new? I'm not gonna start until things you know get really popping. Um, what's been new in the Ukraine crisis? The answer appears to be nothing. That they seem to have either stalled the Russians or stopped them in an effort to, well, it depends. Depends on what your perspective is. It's possible that the Russians are bogged down in some pretty brutal combat. Hello, Mundi. But I think it's really important to understand that we are, what, 12 days into this Russia's special military operation or whatever they're calling it. And it's a, the original, some of the leaked documents indicate that Russia was planning on an 18-day campaign. So they're considerably behind their timeline, but they aren't really that far off. And the Russian military definitely can be patient when they need to be. They've shown it in Afghanistan. They've shown it in Chechnya. These conflicts are measured in months, sometimes years, as we see in Syria. The Russian military intervened in Syria and sustained that intervention for a long, long time. And so it's important to remember, I think, that in these sort of conflicts, while, yes, not being rolled over in 2 weeks is a testament to the Ukrainian defenses and the strength of their defenders, Russia, going back to the First World War, takes a long time to get going, but once it does, it can throw a lot of weight behind its war machine. And so there should be an understanding, and we should expect that this to be a 3-6 month long process, and we should see where that plays out. So I think when we consider the news, I think the sanctions are great. I think the decision not to purchase Russian oil is a good one. Does the U.S. get a ton of its oil from Russia? Not especially, but the U.S., right, 10% of a giant economy's oil consumption is still a lot for a country like Russia. The question is, will these sanctions hurt? And we've seen, for example, the price of major cryptocurrencies has started to climb. And I think that's a realization that the best way to circumvent these devaluations of the ruble and these restrictions on the trading of the ruble is to move it through a regulatory structure like cryptocurrency that the Russians, that U.S. sanctions cannot touch. And so I think we need to remember that the longer sanctions go on, the easier they are to circumvent, the greater the incentives are for other countries to circumvent those sanctions. I think we need to just recognize that this could become a huge slog. Obviously, anything can happen. We could wake up tomorrow and Putin could announce a withdrawal. But I think the chances of a long, grinding conflict are much greater. And I think that's a large part, because of how Russia thinks about warfare. And I think it's like, if the sanctions aren't going to throttle them in the next month, then they're going to be able to find a way to sustain this fight. Hey, Bard Smoke, thanks for the sub, my man. Let's see. Appreciate the sub. All right. But do you guys have any questions from me? Yeah, thanks for coming by, Bard CS Smoke. Yeah, do you guys have any questions for me before we crack into the Team Fortress 2 action? Tai Chi, I agree. I think the FSB leaks, which ones are you talking about, Tai Chi? Well, RM, Russia doesn't have the logistics right now to sustain a fight. But the longer it goes on, the more they're going to have time to build out robust logistics system. The question is, back in Moscow, are they going to have the money to actually fund a war? Yeah, I think the smart money is definitely that Russia did not expect this level of pushback. I think they expected it to go much like the war in Georgia, where the sanctions were light, the outrage was minimal, and so I think they are shocked at the level of public outcry and the fact that the Western democracies are responding extremely earnestly to that level of outcry. The FSB is hard to say. It's hard to say if anything is legit. You have to remember the Russians, as poor as they are at high speed, like blitz armor warfare, they are as good at information warfare. They've been doing subversion, deception, information operations at an extremely sophisticated level, media influence since the 1910s or 1920s. So don't think for a minute that we should not take a lot of news from Russia, especially purported Russian leaks, with a grain of salt. Hey guys, we're just, and don't worry, we will be doing some TF2 here in a minute, just letting everybody get in and just, I don't know, see if there's any Ukraine updates, any questions you guys have for it. Exactly, RM. I think if anyone's going to be tight and deeply loyal to Putin, it's going to be his FSB. You guys, I'm sure, know Putin was originally a KGB agent stationed in Eastern Europe during the fall of the Soviet Union. Taiji, in Soviet Russia, if you were bad at information warfare, or if you were a little too good at information warfare, off to the gulag you would go. You have to nip threats in the bud before they get too bad. The FSB is the successor to the KGB, a Russian state external security service. I don't know and I'd be curious to know if I could talk to like a true Russia expert, if they would think that what Putin's level of influence in the FSB was. Oftentimes, at least here in the U.S., if a person heads, for example, an agency or a cabinet or the presidency, and they come from a certain background, they often protect their home turf. George H.W. Bush and the CIA is a good example. Yeah. Are any of the Russian special operations forces in Ukraine currently? I am 100% certain that there are Russian special operations in Ukraine. What are they doing? I'm not sure. All right, guys, let's see. Any other questions that you guys have? And we'll crack in to some Team Fortress 2. Live training. Alderin, there was actually reports that a lot of the Russian military, prior to this invasion, engaged in live training by going to the front in Donbas. Supposedly, Moscow's artillery school would have their artillery officers do a final rotation through Donbas to complete their training. How do troops get support from other countries, like air support? Alex, well, if you are a NATO country, you have very robust air control protocols. For example, I believe all air traffic uses English as a default means of communication. There's a default way of talking to aircraft, or a default set of radio protocols. And so that enables you to talk to all sorts of different aircraft. For people like Ukraine, Each country is going to make its own decisions as to how much support it wants to provide. It has to weigh that against Russia's condemnation, and against the likelihood of being pulled into a wider war that their public opinion may not like.
So I said, no, it was supposed to be my pentakill. Why did you do that to me? I killed, I know, 1, 2, 3 for champions. I can't believe